Welcome back to the Rebel's Edge, where we're talking about the first trading day since Donald J. Trump became the 47th president of the United States. So we've got a lot to talk about covering stocks, futures, and sports here on the Rebel's Edge. Bang!
Oh boy.
From Courmayeur, Italy, Pete.
Courmayeur?
Courmayeur. It's just on the other side of France, with Mont Blanc basically separating us from France. And I'm over here with 400 people from the trading industry around the world. We gather once a year for a ski competition, and then once a year for golf. Believe it or not. I've never gone to the golf thing, Pete, for obvious reasons.
See, that's the difference between John and I, though, folks. John goes to Mont Blanc. I just try to find a pen somewhere. If I find a Mont Blanc, I'm going to put it in my pocket.
Well, we're delighted all of you could tune in. It's certainly been a wild first trading day back. Yesterday, of course, it was the observation of Martin Luther King Day. So we're not closed for the election, but we were closed for Martin Luther King and the observation of that. But boy, the markets, Pete, just took off pretty much right away. The Dow higher by some 427 points, NASDAQ about 70 points, and the S&P 500 38 points. So pretty nice performance across the board, Pete.
Yeah, we'll take it. That's for sure. All right, let's jump into macro, John.
All right. Well, I'm going to say macro is the markets and currencies certainly reacted immediately to the 47th president of these United States talking about tariffs again. And we both know, Pete, we're going to hear a lot more about tariffs. He likes to use these as a cudgel, meaning that he likes to use them as a threat more than he's actually used them as an imposition of an additional tax, if you will. But he wants to make things fairer, Pete. He wants it to be a level playing field. So he's not trying to get an advantage here. He's trying to take away an advantage that trading partners like Canada or like Mexico have against us. And there's a whole bunch of others that he's going to be going after next.
No doubt about it, John. I'm right there with you. I mean, my macro minute is the president as well, 45 and 47, first day with flowing. But let's be honest, this started November 5th. I mean, once we knew who was going to win and did win, that's when the markets really started to rip. That's where we started to hear more and more. And how about the fact of all the different things that he's been doing, John, one of which is, and it could be pretty interesting because of what he's talking about as far as drill, baby, drill, and some of the oil numbers that are coming out right now, the thousands of acres of water where they're going to do some of that in the Gulf of America. That should be pretty interesting. And
the Gulf of America, I love that too, Pete.
You've got the regulations and all the rest of that. I was actually on this morning, John, with Maria, but Maria was out, so I was on with Cheryl, and we were talking about this, and it's a big deal. I mean, I think the influence and all of the minutia of things that he's already come up with, that he is pushing out. I mean, this is day one back in the White House, and there's a lot going on behind the scenes and right in front of everybody as well right now. And it's incredible what Donald J. Trump is doing. And I don't know that any other president has been this aggressive in day one as he has.
Very true, Pete. Everything from taking away security clearances to people that said that disinformation was correct and turned out, nope, it wasn't, and they were lying. He took away their security clearance, Pete. 51 people that work in Intel for the various three-letter agencies had their security clearance slammed. And once you do, you never really get it back, because it doesn't matter who takes it away. If they take away your security clearance, you're done.
Yep.
So let's talk, Pete, about the futures, fantastic as they may be. Fantastic futures today. I'm going to say Bitcoin, Pete. The president, of course, has his own meme coin that has gone up spectacularly. But since this is futures and there aren't futures on that coin yet, I'm going to focus in on Bitcoin and say, hey, 2.5% rally is not bad. Again, this one actually did trade not only yesterday, Pete, but of course throughout the weekend because Bitcoin never closes.
Right. Yep. I'm going to go with this one. And this is one you talked about not too terribly long ago, John, but I mean, it's absolutely staggering. How about coffee? And by the way, I'll throw it out there. We did see a little bit of unusual options today out there in Starbucks. And one of the things that I find pretty intriguing is coffee and the S&P were kind of a mirror image of each other this past year until we got towards November. Once we got to November, it absolutely took off and has been ripping ever since, John. Coffee has rocketed up over 40% more than the S&P, and coffee's at all-time highs. It's been absolutely ripping. I think it's something that I know you talked about it probably just in the last week or two. It just continues to go to the upside, and I found it interesting on a day where we're seeing Starbucks hit, as I said, for UOA. A lot going on, and that's one of the big ones right now. I think that's a huge storyline.
It gives them a great excuse, Pete. I'm not saying they always need an excuse, but to be able to say, you know what, coffee prices are going up, up, up. We got to raise our prices. The downside of that is they end up pricing themselves out of a number of investors and people that just want a cup of Joe. So we'll keep our eye on it. All right, Pete, let's dive into stocks today. And I'm going to kick it off with Charles Schwab because they reported Q4 earnings that were about, 10 cents. So call that about 11% better than street estimates. They estimated 91, came in at 101. Schwab, of course, $1 trillion brokerage firm with trillions of dollars, plural, in their various accounts of their customers. Pretty nice report, Pete.
Yeah, across the board, it looked great, John. As a matter of fact, with the revenue year over year up nearly 20%, and we were right there pushing on the 52-week highs. This kind of backs up everything we've seen already in the earnings season as it kicked off with financials. And Schwab did an absolutely phenomenal job. I mean, the quarterly earnings growth was strong, record inflows. I mean, across the board, you just look, the earnings themselves, you just pointed that out as well. Net income was up year over year in a big way. I mean, everywhere you look, the stock almost got to 83, the 52-week highs. It nudged right up against it, didn't actually get there, but this is one to keep a close eye on. They have really had a magnificent report. Look at that. I mean, that chart says it all. It's an amazing quarter that they were able to put up.
Very strong numbers, Pete. And then, to a Minnesota company, Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing, they used to be called, now it's 3M, Pete.
Yeah.
And 3M Q4 results, they didn't beat by as much as Schwab did. It wasn't like a 10% beat. It was more like a 1.5% beat. But a beat is a beat. And then, of course, you end up with guidance and projecting sales growth. And those all helped Schwab rally by about 5% so far today.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I said Schwab. I misspoke again.
That's all right.
Sorry.
The guidance that they put up there, John, a lot of that was based upon the 2 to 3% of the organic sales growth that they're projecting. Margin expansion is another part of this whole thing. Their earnings crushed it pretty good. I mean, they beat it. They didn't absolutely destroy it, but nonetheless, John, this has been an unbelievable year. And for the people who have missed out on 3M, over the last 52 weeks, it's up 64%. It's not such a bad thing for a company like 3M to get that kind of a bump. And new highs, it hit $150 a share today. So when you look at the range of 76 to 150, and here we are today, we hit that 150 mark. This is a stock that has absolutely been on fire. The 150, by the way, was in the pre-market. We aren't seeing that, but it's a new high, and this is a stock that has been on fire, not just because of Trump. They had been even before that, but this is just one more accelerant that's getting it that much higher. And John, it still isn't all that expensive. I think this one is a very, very interesting stock and a company going into this year, 2025.
Pete, I think we both know this next one is also a very interesting company.
Yeah.
It's Rocket Lab, folks. And if you happen to watch President Trump and or his new best pal, Elon Musk, they were both talking about putting the stars and stripes on Mars. And that, even though Elon Musk, of course, is SpaceX, not Rocket Lab, folks. Rocket Lab, nonetheless, got a price increase on their target price over at City, Pete, and they had a lot of, I'll call it cross-pollination from Musk and Trump talking about space exploration and how it's coming back in America.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I mean, when you've got a stock like this that's up 29%, John, that stands out. 52-week highs, it got almost up to $32 a share. The interesting part of the city was that they lifted their price target from 22 all the way up to 35. Well, shoot, they might even want to start thinking about that. Maybe they've even got a little bit more. When you look at the strength, what's going on with aerospace as well as defense, it makes a lot of sense. Now, there have been some bumpiness about that as well, but when you've got a short interest of 10 to 15% as well, and somebody comes out and they change by $13, I would say that those shorts are part of the reason why that stock is up as much as it is today, because those shorts are scrambling to cover if they can.
Pete and our faithful viewers, you might want to take a look at a chart of this one, folks, because back in August, 6 months ago, it was a $5.50 stock. Pull it up, RKLB. You know where it is today? $30.30. And that, my friends, is nearly 6 times your invested capital. If you believed in Rocket Labs back in August, you're a very happy camper today.
Yep.
All right, Pete. Last one, let's do EDU, because this is New Oriental Education and Trading. The FactSet expected them to do revenue of about $1 billion. And they did more than that, and that's a good thing. Adjusted earnings missed consensus, however. So, Pete, what do you think of this one? And with all the things going on in Chinese stocks, I know you're not the biggest fan of those stocks, but when you get one that's moving like this, it's hard to not watch, especially when they put up a miss on the guidance like that and the stock falls 24%.
Yeah, you cannot afford to miss in the way that they did. And they have a great balance sheet. The cash to debt is $4 billion, John. They have great free cash flow. It's about $400 million. When you look at the numbers, they're pretty impressive. We look at the revenue, it was up 19% year over year. All of those are great numbers, but they did miss on the earnings. And why is that? The operating costs got too much. This is one where I'm kind of curious about, John. I haven't done a thing yet. Stock is between the 52-week range of $44 to $98. And here it is today, trading right around $46, down 20 some odd percent right now. It's an absolute death move on this particular name. But when I look at all the numbers that stack up, it gets me pretty intrigued. And, you know, I don't know that they're going to continue to do this over the next couple of quarters where they have this kind of an operating issue. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But if they don't, this is a stock that might have a lot of room to the upside. And certainly they have the balance sheet that I really do like that. That's important. Plus they have real earnings. So this isn't a company that has no earnings. They actually have earnings. They did miss, but they have earnings. And I don't know that they're going to do this quarter after quarter. So I'm going to keep a very close eye on this name.
Well, Pete's right, folks. It was $98 last March, 2024. So not quite a year ago. Let's call it 10 months ago. It was 98. And today it's half of that. So if you believe at all in the stock, you might say at half price, would I consider it? Maybe. All right, Pete. I know we had an awful lot of interesting stuff going on. We had one of our favorites, you and I, the Detroit Lions, actually getting beat at home. Ooh. I did not see that coming. I will be the first to admit it. But we had a lot of really good games, both pro and college. So I'll throw it back to you and say, what do you want to talk about on the sports side today?
Well, you know, I think that when you look at the sports itself and the NFL and the playoffs, they're always just exciting as hell. And you never know. I mean, you've got home field advantage. You've got this, you've got that. You've got a great record. And then you look at how things actually fall into place. And it's absolutely a magical thing. I mean, it's why the NFL is so damn good, John, because everybody's got a shot And does it mean they're all going to win? No. Obviously, the Texans went out. They didn't win. But it sure is exciting to watch teams like Baltimore go head-to-head with somebody like Buffalo. Buffalo finally got over that hump, but they got the big hump left, John. They got to get over Kansas City, and that's been the nemesis, unfortunately, for a really great team and a great quarterback, and maybe this is the time. I was just going to hit this, though, John, because we talked about, wow, look at all these openings for head coaches around the NFL, and it happens every year, 6 or 7, maybe 8, every single year. Well, a couple of them have filled, but the most important is your team, your Chicago Bears, went out. Now, here's who they interviewed, John. This will take just a second. Eddie George, Adam Stanovich, Brian Flores, Joe Brady, Todd Monken, Aaron Glenn, Pete Carroll, Mike McCarthy, Arthur Smith, David Shaw, Thomas Brown, Ron Rivera, Mike Kafla, Weaves, and then Petzling. That's who you guys looked at. You know who you hired? Probably the guy that was the first one you talked to, Ben Johnson. And for all the right reasons. He goes up to Detroit. He's young as can be, John, but I'll tell you what, he has a command of offense that I think is amazing. And all you've got to do is do one thing. Look at what he's done with Goff since Jared Goff got there with the Lions and what he's been able to do with the play calling, how he's made him a far better. This was the best year that Jared Goff has ever had as a quarterback in the NFL. So I think with that alone, and you're in the same division, but now you've got Caleb Williams, who I think that, a lot of people, including myself, you might not have liked certain things about his personality, but I'll tell you what, he's a good athlete. He can run and he can throw the football pretty well. So he's done a great job, but he needs a coach around him who's going to give him an offensive line and give him an opportunity to have success. I think this was an absolute no-brainer for the Chicago Bears to hire Ben Johnson. What about you? Was there anybody else that you would have preferred they hired? Because for me, I don't know, whoever gets Ben Johnson, if he went to Jacksonville, great. But he went to the Bears and the same division, which is kind of interesting. So this is going to be something over the next couple of years, John, where he's going to be going head-to-head against Dan Campbell, and that ought to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, no doubt. And the guy that you and I would have in our hearts, Pete, would be Ron Rivera.
Yeah.
And he's a former Bear player and a great coach at various situations, some of which were not the greatest for him. But, look at what happened when they got rid of Ron in Carolina.
Yeah.
You can look at how Cam Newton's future just kind of vaporized at that point. I think he's the right guy, Pete. And for a change, the Bears signed him to a 6-year contract. I think he probably insisted on 2 things, one of which being a 6-year contract, not a 3 or 4-year deal like, sometimes the Bears do. I think there was almost no chance they were going to go after Belichick, Pete, because, again, the McCaskies throw around nickels like they're manhole covers. They'd have to, pay out $10 million. That's the buyout for his contract.
Yeah.
So there are a few people out there that'll do that, but not the McCaskies. And quite frankly, I think this guy's better for this young quarterback, Pete, than Bill Belichick would be. No disrespect to Bill Belichick. I just think this guy's a little tighter with a younger quarterback like this, Pete, than a 70-plus-year-old coach who's probably a little persnickety at this point in his career.
That'll be interesting down in North Carolina. And I don't know that it's over, John. I mean, whether it's the Raiders or anybody else, somebody might still go after Belichick. Who knows? Shoot. I mean, you got a guy like as old as Pete Carroll who's still bouncing around, and he wanted that Bears job. He just didn't get it. And I think they did the right thing, not going with a defensive guy and going with an offensive guy. And I think that's what, obviously for Ben Johnson, that was something that was going to be critical for that first pick quarterback that you've got last year, Caleb Williams. I think that's great. NCAA, John, Ohio State, they did win. The line was 8.5 last I saw. Ryan Day was asked to be fired. Everybody wanted to fire the guy, right? They lose to Michigan, and this guy, people wanted to hang him from the highest thing. I mean, absolutely crazy what people were talking about there. But as it turns out, maybe he's not so bad. He absolutely put the offense together and dominated. And that's why I go back and say, you know what? a rivalry game is a rivalry game for a reason. It's not because you win every single time you play them. That doesn't make a rivalry. It's the fact that it's a fist fight every time you get in there. And yeah, there's some blowouts here and there, but there's going to be times where the better team doesn't win. And that was the case this year, where Michigan had the better of Ohio State, which makes it interesting. They also had the better, Ohio State had the better of Notre Dame. And they kind of jumped up pretty quick, John, in the first half. It was a fun game to watch. I think they just had so much talent and more talent than Notre Dame. Now, we all knew that going in. It's why the spread for the game was 8.5 points. But I will say this. I think when you look at the college football playoff, it was a success. I think the 12 teams worked out just fine. I think if I only have a pushback, and I think everybody has this same pushback, it might be about how the seeding is done and whether it's home fields and all the rest of it. So there's some tweaking they could do. Hell, they can tweak it however they want. And I think that they learned from this year, and I think that they will tweak it. But it was a great game, John, and the part that really changed in this game was who could run the football. Oh, there's a surprise. I've been saying that. You've been saying that for a long time. The team that can run the football, college or pro, it's the same in the NFL. Take a look at who's left. But the team that can run the football has a great opportunity to be somebody really special. And last night, all you had to do is watch Ohio State run for, 214 yards, John, averaging 5 a carry. Notre Dame had 53 yards, 2 yards a carry. That kind of says it all, because the dominance running the football really changed that game. And Ohio State was really like a man amongst boys, I hate to say it, against Notre Dame. But Notre Dame gave it a shot, and they gave it a fight to the very end. They're not a quitting team. They got a great coach with Marcus Freeman. I thought the whole thing, I'm just curious what you think about the college football playoff, John, and do you agree that they need to do some tweaks? They don't need to add teams. They should stick with 12, in my opinion. But I think they need to tweak some of the things that we all were complaining about during this season.
Well, I could think of a bunch of tweaks, Pete, but we don't have enough time. And one I'll just start off with. I don't think there's an automatic in. In other words, if you win your conference or whatever, I don't think that means crap with some of these. Because look at how some of those schools won their playoff for their conference, and then they went out in the first round.
Yeah.
I think every single one of them, in fact. But for Ryan Day, Pete, I'm going to say, listen to this. I just pulled it up just so you could kind of get your head around it too. 2002, he's a tight ends coach at New Hampshire. 2003 and 4, he's a grad assistant at Boston College. 2005, he's a grad assistant under Urban Meyer at Florida. Then he's wide receiver coach in 2006 at Temple. 2007 through 11, he's the wide receiver coach at Boston College. This kind of lining up to be a head coach for you, Pete? I mean, again, I'm not putting him down, but listen to all these things. So then he's an offensive coordinator and wide receiver coach at Temple in 2012. 2013 and 14, he goes back to Boston College as the offensive coordinator. 2015, he's the quarterback coach for the Eagles. 2016, quarterback coach for the Niners. And then basically he goes to Ohio State as a quarterback coach and co-offensive coordinator in 2017, and he gets the head coaching job in 2019. That's an interesting resume, Pete, but it ain't quite the same as a lot of these coaches. And I think a lot of people just didn't think he was ready for this job. But obviously, except for Michigan, he does seem like the guy that's the right guy for the job. And good luck to you now, Ohio State. If any of those haters want him out now, there'd be schools out there clamoring to hire this guy, Pete.
Yeah, when you look at those offensive position coaching that he did, whether it's an O coordinator, quarterback, or wide receiver, what is Ohio State always known for? Wide receiver U, just like LSU. They always put wide receivers into the NFL. He's impressive with that side of it, the offensive coordinator side, the quarterback side. I mean, yeah, the critics are out there, John, and if you strip out the Michigan losses, his record is impeccable. I mean, yeah. And even with those losses, his record is unbelievable. So the fact that they wanted to hang him from the highest tree is absolutely ridiculous. And again, as I said, the guy, he is the right guy for the right school, and they are seeing that. And any of these fans really need to back off in the future, I think. I mean, unless he does something awful, which we've seen some coaches do that, this guy's pretty damn impressive. You don't have to like him. I'm not a huge fan, quite honestly, but I will say, is he good? He's damn good. He might be one of the best college coaches in football right now.
Well, I would tend to think, Pete, that again, if he became available, he would command high dollar at any school, and most of those schools, because apparently, with the exception of Michigan, the guy is an offensive genius. I mean, these guys, they score and they hurt you when they score. It's not just obviously a comparison, perhaps not based on their history, Pete, but based on, Harbaugh, when he was at Michigan, he did the same sort of thing, but he didn't have the wide receiver core that this guy has, to your point, because that freshman is about as good as a freshman ever has been at 6'3" and 218 pounds. And he pulled them out of the fire when Notre Dame was trying to come back, and they did that 56-yard play, to basically hold on to the ball, Pete, and then go down and kick that field goal to make it a 2-score game, and it's over. Not enough time on the clock. So, congratulations to them. Congratulations to Notre Dame for getting there, because most people would have counted them out long ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, it was fun, and they will do some tweaks for sure, John.
Well, folks, thanks for joining us today. We will be back with another Rebels Edge tomorrow. It'll probably be Pete and Mr. Mark Lopresti, the CEO of the Rebel Nation and Market Rebellion, because I'll be racing tomorrow, Pete. And we were practicing today. I'll post up some pictures from here, folks. John Najarian, Jon. My dad was John. And of course, you can follow Pete at Pete Najarian. And by the way, there's that QR code right there. Scan that, folks, and come join us out in Vegas for RebelCon 2025. I know you'll have a great time. I know you'll learn a lot. And the tickets are going pretty fast. So make sure you don't let this slide. And we'll see you tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern Time.